National Party has just finished a conference, and its last real set piece before the election campaign proper starts in Wellington. It is identified, and clearly by polling, and I'd have to say in my experience on this show in the last 4 months, or in fact this year, it has identified law and order, crime, or a perceived increase in crime as one of the driving factors for this election when people get into the voting booth. And no matter what the statistics are, the perception of a crime wave or lawlessness in New Zealand is real and is impacting people's lives. It has also identified red tape, the amorphous idea of red tape or regulation, as being, particularly for the farming communities, one of the things they are most concerned about. And it has, though not to the extent of the ACT Party, embraced what the left would call racism, others would call a rejection of race or ethnic-based rights for New Zealand in regard in particular to the Treaty of Waitangi. So what sort of battleground does that draw for the general election? Well, someone who's like Robert Patman, whose opinion and analysis we value greatly on the platform to do this, is Bryce Edwards from the Democracy Project at Victoria University, and Bryce joins us by video link now. Bryce, good to talk to you again. Did you go to the conference in the weekend? Did you stick your head in there?
No, I didn't quite have the inspiration, the desire to do that during my weekend. I didn't really detect that much would be happening, to be honest. I don't live too far from the conference, but no, I didn't quite.
It was pretty stock standard from what I saw. You know, get people in the room, get them all to sit together so it looks like there are more of them. Some nice videos, some nice social video made. Give a stump speech, and rah, 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 and everyone goes home feeling good and, you know, press the flesh a bit.
I think that sums it up very nicely, Sean. It was a very polished, competent affair. They didn't stuff up, and that's really what was probably one of their main metrics they wanted to get to, not make any big mistakes. It was steady as you go. It was traditional National. And, I mean, I still wonder whether National's got its mojo back. So we've had Christopher Luxon complain that the country's lost its mojo, which I largely agree with.
Yeah.
And he makes lots of good critiques of where New Zealand society is going wrong, is in decline, and he's picked up on that zeitgeist. I think that the public are feeling that things aren't going in the right direction. We just didn't see much from him in the weekend to give us confidence that he's got the answers, that he's got his mojo back. In fact, I don't believe that's the case.
Yeah.
So, you know, we saw, yes, the law and order and some focus on the economy, but it wasn't anything that really wows us.
Yeah.
I think we'll be talking about it this morning, but not much.
Yeah, and there's not much resonance there. Look, I'd go slightly further. I didn't find out till I went to field days the weekend before last that Back on Track was the National Party campaign slogan. It was like soft launch. Did you know that is their campaign slogan, is Back on Track?
Look, I did, and I actually think it's a very good one. I think it does tap into that zeitgeist of feeling that we're not on the right track, that the country's going in the wrong direction. I think it's one of their better ones for a long time, and it's better than the one that John
I just haven't seen it pushed out there. You know, the idea with the slogan, and literally I can remember doing this for TOP. We came up with Care, Think, Vote. We had people chanting that at our meetings because that was what it was there for. It was the rallying cry.
Yeah.
You know, cry.
No, it is a bit of a mystery, I agree. And whether we're about to see it on the billboards everywhere, I don't know. They've certainly got enough money. That's one thing we could see from the conference and from the last few months is they have been fundraising so well.
Yeah.
And so this is a party that is very flush. And so we will see a lot of advertising.
Have they been fundraising well, or are there an awful lot of people with money who want to get rid of Labor? I mean, there's two ways to look at
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Look, and that's the best thing that National's got going for them at the moment is the decline of Labour, the lack of mojo in Labour, if you like. And if you compare this conference over the weekend to Labour's one a few weeks ago, it's a pretty low bar, but, Labour didn't really inspire much. Their biggest, thing to come out of that conference was that they reiterated their policy not to raise the age of super. And yeah, I mean, that's not a bad policy in my view, but it wasn't exactly inspiring stuff. So National hasn't really had much that they've had to beat Labour on, and they hardly mentioned Labour in the conference, which I thought was fascinating. They didn't really sledge Labour much. I think they've got this smart strategy of just letting Labour.
It's a sleepwalk. Let's be honest. It's sleepwalk to victory. It's let the other guys stuff up. Governments lose elections. Oppositions don't win them. Interesting to note too, Bryce, though, that the Greens are apparently getting more money now for campaigning. So even the left are abandoning Labour and saying, oh, well, there's no one else but the Greens if you're a bit of a lefty, if you're not a centre-righter. I thought that was remarkable too, and worrying for Labour. But despite all that, Bryce, the polls stubbornly seem not to move. We've got Labour and National both locked in the mid-30s, neither of them breaking out of that zone. And we've got ACT doing pretty well and the Greens doing a little bit better in the Maori Party there. I mean, nothing's really changed despite the loss of ministers and, race-based surgery and everything else. The electorate's kind of disinterested.
Oh, look, I think we could be heading for a very low voter turnout in this election. There's two big drivers of voter turnout, by the way, Sean. One is whether people are inspired by the parties and, kind of have a enthusiasm for one side. And we're not seeing that, I don't believe, at all. So that kind of suggests we could be for a record low turnout. But the other one is whether the election is close or not. And there's no doubt about it that, like you just said, things are still close between the left and right blocs. There's a lot more support for the minor parties in those both blocs, and that's where the focus is going to be, because Labour and National are just so boring at the moment, and the Greens, ACT, Te Pāti Māori, even TOP, they're just so much more interesting than the major parties. Yeah. So they are the ones to watch over the next few months. You didn't
mention New Zealand First, and look, I've been watching New Zealand First all year. They haven't moved much either, and you would think, he's committed to be part of the centre-right bloc or to lean that way if he gets back. How do you feel New Zealand First are doing? Can they get to 5%? Because they don't seem to have any electorate they've got a chance in.
Yeah, well, I keep on changing my mind a bit about New Zealand First. Mostly I think they'll be back. Mostly I think the conditions are just perfect for them. But I am just amazed that Peters especially is not getting many cut through. They don't seem to be out there, but sometimes it's a case that these parties are doing everything below the radar, and sometimes parties like New Zealand First are out there going around the communities, doing little, hall tours and things, and people like me in Wellington just don't see it. Yeah. But you're right, those polls aren't really doing that well for New Zealand First at the moment. I do think there's a chance that Shane Jones can win Northland if National do some careful sidestepping there.
All right, so you still think a deal that isn't a deal could be done there? And Matt King, the independent right-wing candidate or Christian candidate there, has had a pretty bad couple of weeks too.
Yeah, so no, I think Shane Jones is a pretty superbly he's a great campaigner, and so I still think.
Despite the fact, I have to point out, Bryce, he's never won an electorate.
No, I know, though. Yeah, but there's always a first time.
Yeah, there is. So, Bryce, we're stuck. I don't know if it feels like phony war almost, with National not wanting to truly engage because it believes it doesn't have to win the conflict.
Yep.
Labour, and I have to say generally with the compliant news media continuing to attack on a personal basis, Luxon, and they are doing actually attack politics. They desperately want to say we're better than National. They don't want to lose. ACT doing its own thing, the Greens getting lots of money. It's really hard. I'm trying to get a feeling for this election, and I don't campaign, and I don't feel like if you like, I don't have a clear view yet. It's a bit like watching what's happening in Russia. You know something's up, but you're not quite too sure what's going on.
Look, we can watch the polls, and the polls just give us a pretty good idea of things. They're tight, but unfortunately in this country we don't allow betting on political outcomes. It's against the law, and I think that's really unfortunate.
Do you think they'd be more interested if we were writing book on this?
Yeah, I think so. Look, it would be, and I would bet on it. But it's worth looking at the Australian sports betting sites, because there are lots of people putting a lot of money on this election, and there are people who are weighing these things up, and they're not just going on the current polls. Of course, they're thinking, where will things be in 111 days?
What are the bookies? What odds are the bookies in Aussie giving, Bryce?
TAB and Sportsbet.
I didn't realise this was part of your academic research. How fascinating!
Oh, it is. I don't bet on them as part of my academic research.
I should watch what the odds are doing. So what are they saying?
Odds. So Sportsbet, a major website in Australia, they're paying for a national win. For every dollar you bet, they're paying $1.45, which is very. What do you call that in terms of odds? It's very. Yeah. So they're pretty much saying that National's going to win. They're only going to pay $1.45 on a win, whereas for Labor, they're going to pay $2.75. So they think that Labor,
I get it. You know what we're going to do on the platform now? I'm going to check that every week. We're going to have the Aussie sports bet for the election.
Yep.
Didn't know about that, Bryce.
The TAB one as well.
What a great data set to use for political prediction.
It is.
Yeah.
This is people putting their money where their mouth is on what they actually think. They're not talking about what's happening in the polls right now. They're predicting to October 14 what they think it is, and the market is saying easily a National win. Well, of course, a National Prime Minister with whoever knows, whether it's New Zealand First, whether it's ACT, whoever top could be in there. But that's their bet.
All right, now, Bryce, I'm crowdsourcing for my rare interview with Christopher Luxon. He will talk to all sorts of shock jocks and radio DJs in the course of a week, but only talks to me, it seems, once every 6 months. But he is on this morning at 8:30. What would you be asking him?
Oh, that's a big question for me, Sean. I would be asking where his ambition is for New Zealand, because so far it seems...
Mate. He wants to get us back on track. I can answer that one.
But it's platitudes, you have to say to Christopher. New Zealanders actually deserve much more than he's offering at the moment. He's, they want the mojo back. They believe his critiques, but they don't believe that he's putting forward the answers yet. So he still has to front up. He's got a duty to not just be a small target. You know what I mean by that. Just, trying not to give his opposition much. And he's doing that job well. But New Zealanders deserve some more positive things than just relying on Labor stuffing up.
Yeah, they've clearly identified from the conference this weekend, Bryce, law and order, crime is the issue, and stronger crime policies means longer sentencing. Quite clearly. Do you think that is? And personally, I got to say, from my impression and from the feedback we clearly get at the platform from callers, crime for many New Zealanders, whether it's true or not statistically, is perceptually a huge issue. And that is the right issue for an opposition to focus in on.
It is. I guess I just think they might be getting it a bit out of proportion. The polling surveys show that it's far from the top of citizens' concerns at the moment. It's kind of 4 or 5. So, I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't focus on it to some extent, but it would be a shame if that's all National are focusing on. What we seem to be getting is a bit of a duo at the moment of Nicola Willis focusing on the economy and giving the economic messages, and Luxon being the hard line on law and order, popular stuff. Maybe that's a successful formula, but I personally think that this election should be a battle between Grant Robertson and Nicola Willis, dealing with the economic issues. These are the things that are going to impact on New Zealand.
The bread and butter, as Hipkins said.
The bread and butter. It is bread and butter.
Hipkins off in China. Probably be quite happy to have the break from his ever shrinking or changing cabinet.
Yeah.
I wonder
he has
how
to deliver there.
Yeah, I wonder how much upside there is in that trip for him, to be honest.
Look, New Zealand's they'll expect to see some photo opportunities, some handshaking, etc., and that won't change anything for anyone. But if there's some sort of deal, and there could well be,
it'll be for computer gamers, people who make computer games. That'll be the big thing.
It might well be. But if China does actually offer something substantial that can improve New Zealand's economy for exporters, that will be a win that even farmers or whoever will look favourably on Hipkins about. So that could still be something significant, I think.
Yeah. Hey, Bryce, always good to catch up, mate. I thank you very much indeed for your time.
Cheers.
And at least, I guess, we live in a more stable country than Russia is right now, don't we?
Yeah, but still without its mojo.
I love a good democracy. Bryce Edwards from the Democracy Project of Victoria University.